I'm Jessica Zartler with the Common Stack and Token Engineering Commons and also the Token Engineering community. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share today. And in token engineering, we're looking at token ecosystem design through the lens of ethics and also through engineering, which is validating designs. But today I'm actually going to bring in some influences and talk about the need to as well in this new emerging discipline to look at bringing in not only science and ethics, but also philosophy and spirituality, or maybe a better phrase, because that's a bit loaded, is consciousness. So I'm going to jump right in here. You can see, I'm not sure if you could hear, but this classic scene in Space Odyssey 2001, where the ape finds this bone and uses it as a tool. So this is kind of like representative of the beginning of technology. So jump ahead a bit, and here we are. Some of you may have seen this meme. Oh, I should probably be presenting. Some of you may have seen this meme. So millions of years of evolution, and how evolved are we really? And looking at the wide context of evolution and where we are in developing technology. So the past 100 years have been one of the biggest and fastest leaps in technological evolution, and something we can look at and just see how fast it moves. In 1911, there was a cartoon about video chatting. And then in 1960, of course, the Jetsons. 89 still seemed a bit far away. And in 2005, here we are. We have Skype, and right now I'm on video call. So VIP was actually invented in the 1970s, but video calling didn't really become popular until 2005. But of course, with conveniences, with this new technology, it is like Pandora's box. It often creates more problems, and really, really big ones. Big ones. So of course, the unintended consequences when we're developing technology, and no matter how good our intentions are, we have to deal with this. But of course, Steve Jobs, he invented, the iPhone. He didn't realize some of the negative aspects of what that would create. And looking at Bitcoin, 30 countries in the world only consume more electricity than Bitcoin, and about 50% of the network is controlled by 2 mining pools. So is this what Satoshi envisioned? Is this what he really wanted when he created this technology? So of course, over the last 30 years, we've seen, we have this powerful new tool, but how are we using it? And it's been just gamifying greed, dopamine hits, keeping the hamster wheels running. These algorithms are, customized to us, but what are we really creating here? We still have, issues with the environment, very extractive systems. So we have this fantastic technology, but we're still not harnessing it to solve some of the biggest issues of our time, to feed people, to make sure we have environmental sustainability. So how are we really using this? Are we being further enslaved or liberated? How are we programming this technology to program us, in a sense? I used to work in marketing for a little while, and you see a lot of these kind of graphs, and I think we still have this terminology that we all use around users, which actually, if you look it up in the dictionary, basically is like a drug user. So even the language that we use is kind of unhealthy, and it's pretty dysfunctional if you think about it. And I always thought these things just kind of looked like flushing people down the toilet. So why and how do we keep creating extractive systems? Why are we not able to program systems that are financially inclusive? Why, in a world where there is enough and we have all this abundance of resources, or at least we used to, why are we still creating systems that create scarcity? Why do we keep doing the same things over and over and over and over? So a little about me and patterns. I grew up here in Florida. It's a pretty weird place. It's a bit of an anomaly where a lot of weird things come together. So I grew up right there where that location dot is, near NASA, Disney, and the KKK's headquarters. The only saving grace was manatees, luckily. But yeah, it was a pretty weird place to grow up. It was the convergence of a lot of different patterns and a pretty strange place. So who am I? I'm a collection of experiences, of memory. I am a lot of just my genetics playing out and patterns, but some of this I'm consciously creating, or at least I think I am. I studied journalism and political science, and I was a teacher for some time, kindergarten teacher. I studied yoga, yogic philosophy, traveled around the world, and ended up down the crazy crypto rabbit hole. I've always been seeking for truth, for answers, always asking why. I grew up in a home, in a family, we had alcoholism and mental health issues. And this made me kind of obsessed with patterns. Where do these patterns come from? And how can we break them? How can we deprogram some of this conditioning, this very deep rooted, even, it's in our DNA. How do we overcome this reactionary, unconscious behavior and programming? And how does that influence the systems and also the things that we create in our own lives? So I rode a bicycle across India, ashrams, silent retreats, encountered, people like Sadhguru, Eckhart Tolle, and just was coming up with more questions than answers, I guess. So looking at patterns, how to deprogram, how to reprogram, how do we break some of these very deep-rooted patterns? So this was something that I have been, even today, looking at in my own life every day. What is the input that creates certain outputs, and what tiny little adjustments can I do to affect the things that I would like to see manifest, or the things that I would like to express in my life? And this led me to looking at and studying yoga philosophy, as I mentioned. So there's many paths of how to deprogram, how to look at reaction versus response. And thousands of years of yogic science and Indian philosophy says there's a word in Sanskrit called tapas, and it means to burn. So to kind of burn the seeds or get to the root, and svadhyaya means self-study. So I'm kind of looking and applying this lens in token engineering and in our token ecosystems of how do we get to the root of why these systems continue to operate the way that they do. So this came to me a few years ago, this term conscious decentralization. And what does that mean? It's the light of awareness. So conscious, most of us, I think we know what this means. It means aware, responding to one's surroundings, awake. Something done with awareness is something you bring into your kind of field of awareness, whereas something unconscious is reactionary, something maybe you could call programming. So right now, for example, gravity's operating. We're not really aware of it. Your body is maybe digesting lunch. You aren't really aware of it. Your feet are resting on the floor or the chair. Well, maybe now that I said feet and chair, you suddenly became aware of those things. So take a moment, if you can, and shift your awareness to your feet. And now shift awareness to your posture. How are you sitting? Does anything change when you become aware? When you start to bring these things to your awareness, yes, there's a natural shift when you bring awareness to something. And we know in quantum physics, for those of you, I know you've heard of wave particle duality and how light operates as both a particle and a wave. And when we observe something, there is a shift or a change. And I know this is a huge extrapolation to take, I am not a photon, but there is something to be said. And there's kind of, some common sense around when you shift your awareness or you bring something into your field of awareness, that there is a change and it does affect a change. And of course, this is still being deeply studied, but you get the sense here. So that was consciousness. Now, and conscious, let's talk about decentralization. So a lot of people say, yay, power to the people. But of course, with great power comes great responsibility, as Uncle Ben and many others have said. What does it really mean? It means responsibility to the people, which, you know, doesn't really have the same ring, but that's what it really is power is also a responsibility. We have to take responsibility for the things around us. So I can walk down the street, I see a piece of garbage, I don't pick it up. But if I want to take responsibility for my surroundings, that's a different story. So with this power comes a great responsibility to each other. And you may have heard the story of Prometheus, a Greek myth of, you know, it kind of represents the lone ranger and using knowledge and unintended consequences. So in order to wield this power, we have to do so responsibly. And what does that mean in token ecosystems? We must understand, we must deeply understand what it is that these mechanisms can create. We need to really look deeply so that we can wield this power in a responsible way. We have to examine our hubris and light the way forward without getting burned by this new Promethean fire. So if you look at, you may have heard of these yogis and also some others who go up in the Himalayas, and there's sub-zero temperatures and they just do breathing exercises. They have that much mastery and control, consciousness, and they consciously and scientifically apply certain processes, certain breathing rhythms that they're able to raise their body temperature. So most people don't master their physical systems, have very little control over their physiological systems. And this affects so many different things, mental health, physical health. But there are ways to apply awareness and to apply science in order to overcome certain limitations or to overcome what is thought possible. So how do we do that in complex systems? How do we apply consciousness and science and certain processes in order to overcome these deeply rooted dysfunctional patterns in our socioeconomic systems? How is that even possible? Well, I'm not saying I have the answers, but I have a few ideas, and I would love to hear yours as well. So number one, I would say question everything, especially our belief systems and our assumptions. Look at the parameters. Model and validate our designs. So certain things that we employ, certain mechanisms in the system have very, very clear outputs or effects or consequences. Then reprogramming value flows. I'm going to show you a few examples of that. And then the last part is looking at culture. So it's great we have all this technology, but unless we nurture the humans and we understand the humans who are creating this technology, what we carry will be embedded into our systems. So number one, question everything. When I was a kid, you know, you look at kids, they always ask, why? I was very much like that, and I carried that on into journalism. And I think a lot of this everybody here, if you're here right now, you're likely doing this as well. And you're kind of an anomaly because you didn't take the normal predictable path. And likely you have chosen to respond rather than react. And you have probably overridden kind of your own programming. Of course, there's so many great memes here. So always question. And Sean Connery says that. So as simple as ABQ, always be questioning, especially our assumptions. So this is a little joke here for all you algorithm creators out there. So yeah, we have to question our assumptions. We have to look at, for where are we creating? What lens are we looking through? Again, no shortage of memes here. There are different paradigms that we're operating from, different kind of colored glasses, you could think of it as. But there are tools out there that already exist to kind of look through this philosophical lens or questioning what is knowledge. And we can go really deep with this, but I want to make it practical. So when we're designing systems and looking at complex systems and engineering, we should be aware. And there's a tool called spiral dynamics. invented by a few fellows, one of whom was the one who came up with the term flow state. So this is different lenses that people look through, and they probably are not even aware of where they're thinking from. So for example, you can kind of think of it almost as like Maslow's hierarchy or chakras. So there's kind of this like survival level, and then all the way and green, it's more about, thinking about others, a society free from greed and selfishness. So it's not like we're in one place all the time. It's a spiral that's constantly kind of going up and down. We're at different times in the day. We're operating from these different places. So I think this is a little more realistic of what these lenses look like. Okay, so yeah, look and question where are we? What lens are we looking through? Where are we operating from? Are we kind of in our lower survival sense, or are we operating from, a place that's not rooted in ego, kind of looking at how to the highest good for everyone? Okay, so number 2, look at the parameters, model and validator designs. Here's where we get a little more concrete for those of you who might think this is a little philosophical for me. So token engineering, what is it? It's a new and emerging discipline focused on holistic systems design in theory, practice, and tools. So the scientific and ethical approach to designing and validating the design of your token ecosystem. So we don't have to make subjective decisions. We have so much science, and when we build bridges or any public infrastructure, cell phone towers, they always model and validate their designs. And this is a transdisciplinary field, which it's so interesting, the humans who are in token engineering, because they come from all backgrounds, and we need all of these lenses. We need all of these different viewpoints in order to create holistic and regenerative systems. So here's a little what happens without token engineering. We've seen in DeFi Ponzi schemes and the same old thing for the last, since Bitcoin came out, 10-11 years ago. It's been kind of the same thing, extractive systems. So we're trying to get out of that now. So we look at how we parameterize our systems. So here's an example. Okay, many projects or token ecosystems, they have a more quantitative model where it's, even metagame, common stack, token engineering commons, we give praise, gold stars, gamification. So the pros here, it kind of gets shit done. The cons is that it's not really the best model for collaboration. It tends to breed competition. And then if we look at the other end of the spectrum, we have kind of this more qualitative, like if you look at data art, they are I think they're the first project to ever create a system that's completely done on intrinsic motivation. They don't have any leaderboards or anything like this. So of course, this is optimizing for innovation, for freedom, for people to kind of self-actualize or to only create what they really feel intrinsically motivated to do, not for money. So it creates a lot of cool stuff, but on the con side, it might be hard to get shit done. So it doesn't mean it's black and white or it's one or the other. But if we start to view these choices through this lens, it's a spectrum, and understand the outcomes of some of these parameter and design choices, then we can more consciously choose which systems we want to create and which systems that we want to be a part of and put our energy and money into. So a lot of DAOs, they've adopted proposal systems where, the burden of proof is on the people submitting. So they're looking at KPIs and very similar practices to corporations, but I thought we were trying to do something different. Why not UBI networks? Things like this. So do we really have to continue the way we have? And let's question it and see what else is out there. And there's some really cool research in the ecosystem with Block Science, Prime DAO, Curve Labs, Token Kitchen, where they're exploring DAO-to-DAO collaboration mechanisms, and they bring this exact thing up. Let's look at the mechanisms that we are employing, and maybe we can flip them to have more trust in each other, that, our value is not just in output and what we do, but there is inherent value in the exploration and allowing people this freedom. So this brings us to, we can make choices, but again, we don't want to make subjective decisions when it comes to choosing the parameters and designs of our system. So we have CAD-CAT, a tool by Block Science. There's another modeling and simulation tool called Token Spice by Trent McConaughey of Ocean Protocol. So we can create a digital twin. And this is an established engineering practice to help us understand and manage these complex systems like digital flight simulators. So they run the system through different scenarios, kind of alternate dimensions to see what effects may throw the system out of balance. So when you input this, the consequence is this. And when we start to understand and model and simulate our systems, we can make more conscious choices, and we can optimize again for whatever it is that our community chooses that we would like to create. This can provide operational decision-making support during the design stage and in continuous governance, and establish the foundations for computer-aided governance. So we don't just have to rely on humans and their patterns. We can employ machine learning and algorithmic policy design to help us to make better decisions. And when I say better, I mean whatever it is that we're trying to optimize for. And hopefully that's for healthier people, healthier economies, and things that are good, regenerative for the environment. At least that's my opinion. So using modeling, we can understand the parameterization and design choices and their outcomes. The eight ball, like when you shake it, it gives you an answer. So that's an oversimplification, but you get the idea if you haven't heard of it before, or maybe you're already working and you're a CAD-CAD modeler. So we have some really cool examples of this in our ecosystem. One Hive Lunoswarm, they're modeling their issuance policy, and they've been able to feed that real-time data back into their system. And conviction voting, it's a new type of voting. You can think of it kind of like real-time voting or vote streaming. So we have these new governance mechanisms. So we need to see, how do people game the system, or how does this impact voting? And this is huge. And then with Gitcoin grants, they're modeling for collusion. So people, again, trying to kind of game the system, making sure that it's a grants program. So making sure money is going to the projects who really deserve it and should be getting it, not just because, somebody can kind of gamify the system to get more funds. Again, these extractive behaviors, how can we model so that we make it easier for people to make good decisions for all, or that there's not a way that they could even game the system. So Dr. Michael Zartler always talks about, we want to maximize for freedom, but we want some safety layers in there. We don't want the bridge to fall down when we drive across it. So we have a really cool example. So if you're new to modeling, or if you like to get a more fun look, the Commons Stack has created the Commons Simulator. It's a really cool a game and art project by a decentralized development team that put a front end on CAD-CAT. So we can model and look at, okay, if we set our reserve ratio to 10%, and you can adjust these different parameters, and you can actually see in the game how it plays out. And luckily, we did good. We got a good future. A little interesting facts. I think there are like 3 billion different possibilities in this game. If you play it, different permutations that you could get different outcomes. So you can go in, play with the Common Simulator, and see how powerful modeling and simulation really are to making better decisions in our systems. So we can choose, again, more consciously, which little dials do we want to tweak, which levers do we want to pull, which paradigms do we want to operate in, and what do we want to optimize for. So applying consciousness and science, we can engineer healthier feedback loops. Okay, and wrapping up here, so the last two things in conscious decentralization and recommendations to start to implement some of these practices, we can already reprogram value flows, and you can see this happening in DeFi for good. So going from degen to regen. So there's a cool project called stakes.social, where instead of staking just for yourself and making money off of yield farming, you can actually you earn 50% and a project of your choice earns 50%. So the Common Stack, we just got a profile up there. It's incredibly cool. So how can we harness DeFi to fund projects that are solving some of the world's biggest challenges, not just profit for ourselves? So how can we, again, reprogram these extractive systems to create more regeneration and engineer for abundance, as Michelle Bowen says. So degen is stake for yourself. Regen, you can stake for yourself and others at the same time, because as we all know, we can print as much money as we really want. There's another cool project I really want to mention, NFT craze right now. NFTs to save endangered species. There's Wildcards was kind of the first, and now Project Arc has partnered with WWF, the World Wildlife Foundation, to do kind of like crypto kitties, but with animals. And that money that is raised actually goes to, and you just heard from Giveth, but the money here goes to different conservation efforts and projects that are looking at better ecology and programs for saving animals. So that's pretty cool. And finally, this is great. Technology is great, but technology is only as good as the humans. Well, we have computer-aided governance. Okay, that's a bit of a debate there. But the point is, it's great if we have good tech, but we should care about the humans. We should stop calling them users to start. They are humans and people, and we really need to examine our cultural frameworks and practices. Healthy economies equal healthy communities, and healthy communities create healthy economies. So we can program and optimize for regenerative systems, institutionalized generosity, and healthy humans. Take care of the humans, again, because what we carry is embedded in our systems. So this is the work of the Common Stack and the Token Engineering Commons, who are looking at how to weave. Ostrom is a Nobel Prize winner and economist, and we're looking at her 8 principles for managing a commons. And also later in the week on Wednesday, there's a panel with Jeb Emmett and Felix and a few others who just wrote an academic paper about scaling the global commons. So with Token Engineering Commons and Common Stack, we're looking at weaving Ostrom's principles into DAOs. How can we have rules and boundaries? We call nested enterprises, conflict transformation. And this is something cool with the Token Engineering Commons as well. It's the first, I believe, one of the first DAOs or commons to actually have a training for conflict management and conflict transformation. We just finished the first round. So would love to see these ideas spread in other DAOs, because, you hear about projects kind of blowing up because there's issues with the humans and there's conflict, and it's natural to have conflict. So how do we handle it, and how do we have more resilient and anti-fragile systems through these experiences? So this is totally new, what we're creating, and we need your help to do it. So just summarizing, my kind of 4 starting tips for conscious decentralization. And again, I would love to hear your ideas and expand on this thought process and how we can do this together. So question everything, model and validate our designs, reprogramming value flows. People are already doing it. How can we look at benefiting the whole while we benefit for ourselves? And then looking at culture and the humans and nurturing the humans. So you can join the mission, the Common Stack. You can find us on Telegram, Discord, Twitter, and all that. And Token Engineering Commons, we're about to hatch. So we would love to get you in the trusted seed if you are aligned in this mission that we're on in conscious decentralization. Join the trusted seed and co-vest with us to pool resources and create a knowledge commons around the Common Stack and this design pattern, the models and simulations and all these kind of DeFi Legos, and also the cultural framework that can become a trellis for what we kind of call warm DAOs, tech plus humans. So we would love and warmly invite you to come and start a conversation with us around these topics. Thank you again for having me, and I really appreciate Metagame and the work that you guys are doing. And we hope to make this more fun as well. And that's why I love your work, because you guys make it fun. We need these like games and interactive ways to engage with this kind of library of knowledge and in these discussions. Thank you.